Shame is one of those quiet emotions. It sneaks in during our lowest moments, takes root in the dark, and tells us things we'd never want anyone to hear. It's that voice whispering, "You're not enough, you don't belong," or if they knew the real you, they'd leave. Shame isolates us, making us feel like we're the only ones struggling, the only ones not measuring up. And it's in that isolation that shame grows stronger, more powerful. But here's the truth: shame cannot survive empathy. Empathy is its kryptonite. When someone reaches across that emotional divide and says, "I hear you. I felt that too," or "You're not alone in this," shame's grip loosens. Empathy creates a bridge out of isolation, a lifeline that tells us we are worthy of connection, even with all our flaws. Empathy is not about having all the answers. It's not about trying to fix someone's feelings or trying to make their shame disappear with logic or advice. Instead, empathy asks us to listen, to sit with someone in their pain without needing to change a single thing. It's the ability to say, "I see you and I understand," without judgment. That kind of listening, that kind of presence is powerful because it shows we don't have to be perfect to be loved. Offering empathy takes courage because it requires us to show up authentically and be vulnerable ourselves. We might be tempted to say, "It's not that bad," or "It could be worse." But empathy calls us to stay with the discomfort, to meet others in their rawest moments without trying to soften the blow. It's about stepping into that shared human experience and acknowledging, "Yes, I know what it's like to feel that way." When we show empathy, we tell people that they are enough, even when they're struggling. And something beautiful happens when we give empathy and receive it. Shame starts to unravel. It loses its hold. Shame's power lies in its ability to make us feel alone. But empathy, with all its warmth and compassion, creates a light that pierces through that darkness. Empathy doesn't demand that we have all the answers or that we say the perfect thing. All it asks is that we show up, that we offer the courage of our presence, and that we're willing to stand beside someone in their darkest hour. Because shame cannot survive in a place where there is understanding, acceptance, and connection. Shame is an emotion that digs deep. It isn't just a fleeting feeling of embarrassment or regret. Shame goes to the very core of who we believe ourselves to be. It's an insidious voice that doesn't critique our actions but questions our worth. It's not, "I made a mistake," but rather, "I am a mistake." Unlike guilt, which can spur us to take responsibility and make amends, shame whispers that there's something fundamentally wrong with us, something so flawed and unlovable that it sets us apart from everyone else. Shame makes us feel like we're alone in a world where everyone else has it together, where everyone else is worthy of love and belonging, and somehow we're the exception. It isolates, convincing us that if people knew our struggles, if they saw our insecurities and our imperfections, they would reject us. Shame is like a shadow that follows us into every room, reminding us of our shortcomings, our mistakes, and every perceived flaw we carry. It reinforces the belief that we're not enough, never smart enough, never good enough, never lovable enough. This feeling of shame doesn't only dwell in private moments of self-reflection, it colors our interactions, shaping the way we show up in relationships, at work, and within our communities. It makes us hide parts of ourselves, afraid of being seen for who we truly are. It keeps us from speaking up, from setting boundaries, from daring to try, because it tells us failure would only confirm what we fear most, that we're not worthy. The most powerful thing about shame is its ability to thrive in silence. It thrives in the quiet, in the secrecy we wrap around our vulnerabilities. The less we talk about it, the stronger it gets. Shame convinces us that we're the only ones who feel this way, and because we believe no one else could understand, we let it pull us deeper into isolation. It's a self-perpetuating cycle, keeping us in a loop where we feel too ashamed to reach out. And so we remain alone with it. Shame, at its core, is about disconnection, disconnecting us from the truth of our worth, from the beauty of our humanity, and from the very connections that could help heal it. Its survival depends on secrecy and isolation, and as long as it can keep us there, it grows. But the truth is, shame is a distortion. It makes us believe in a version of ourselves that's not whole, not real. And the antidote to that distortion, to that painful lie is empathy. Connection is a powerful force that goes beyond mere socializing or shared interests. It's the feeling of truly being seen and valued by another, of knowing that there's a bond that exists beyond surface level interactions. Connection is more than just spending time with people, it's the shared understanding, trust, and acceptance that help us feel like we belong. When we experience genuine connection, it reaches down into the parts of us that might feel isolated, unworthy, or insecure and replaces those feelings with a sense of belonging and value. In a real deep connection, there's a sense of safety and acceptance. It allows us to drop our guard, to be real, and to show up as our authentic selves without fear of judgment or rejection. When we feel connected to others, we are reminded that we are not alone, that our struggles, our dreams, and our insecurities are shared experiences. It's in that space of connection that we are able to see the universal nature of our feelings, and that knowledge itself becomes a source of healing. Connection is also transformative because it's a mirror that reflects back our worth. In connecting with others, especially in moments of vulnerability, we see that we are worthy of care, empathy, and respect. This reflection has a way of challenging our inner critic, the voice that often tells us we're not good enough or that we don't deserve love. In the presence of genuine connection, that critical voice fades because connection offers something stronger: validation, acceptance, and understanding. Connection does more than comfort, it builds resilience. When we have people in our lives who we trust and feel close to, we're better able to face life's challenges. Knowing that someone is there to support us gives us courage to take risks, to be vulnerable, and to try again when we fall. The power of connection lies in this capacity to help us get back up, to remind us that we don't have to face difficulties on our own. It's the reason why people can endure hardship and still come out stronger, because they have people by their side, people who believe in them and care for them. Connection isn't just emotional, it's also biological. Our brains are wired to seek out connection. Studies have shown that human interaction releases chemicals like oxytocin, which foster bonding and reduce stress. This isn't just a nice feeling, it's a survival mechanism. Throughout history, humans have thrived because of their ability to form strong social bonds, to build communities where each person felt valued and cared for. Even in today's world, where independence is often celebrated, connection is still a fundamental part of our well-being. It's what keeps us grounded and reminds us of our place in the world. When we feel connected, shame loses much of its power. Shame relies on isolation, on the belief that we are fundamentally different from others in a way that makes us unworthy. But connection tells a different story. It shows us that we are just as deserving of love and acceptance as anyone else. It brings us out of the shadows of isolation and into a space where we can be vulnerable, share our stories, and see that others have walked similar paths. Our connection bridges the gap between us and others, reminding us that we're all human, that we all have struggles and imperfections, and that those very things are what make us beautifully, undeniably worthy. Empathy is the ability to reach across the divide between oneself and another person, to feel and understand another's experience from their perspective. It goes far beyond sympathy, which may involve feeling sorry for someone. Empathy requires an intentional and compassionate effort to understand what another person feels, thinks, and endures as if it were happening to us. Empathy isn't just about putting oneself in another's shoes, it's about being fully present, setting aside our own judgments, and offering an open heart and mind to listen without an agenda. One of empathy's most powerful aspects is its capacity to connect people in meaningful, transformative ways. When we experience empathy, we're communicating to the other person, "I'm here with you." Empathy acknowledges that no one should have to carry their burdens alone. In these moments, empathy creates a safe, non-judgmental space for someone to be seen and heard, offering them a place where they can feel less alone in whatever they are facing. Empathy is not easy. It often requires vulnerability on our part, because to truly empathize, we have to tap into similar feelings within ourselves, allowing us to understand their pain or joy with a sense of authenticity. It means we can't stay detached or aloof. We have to open ourselves up and sometimes let down our own defenses. Empathy can also mean putting aside our urge to give advice, judge, or solve the problem. Often, empathy is simply about being present, not about having the right response or the perfect answer. It's about honoring someone's experience as it is, allowing them the freedom to feel fully without the expectation to be fixed. Empathy is a skill, one that can be learned and cultivated. Many people assume empathy is a trait you're either born with or you're not. But that's not true. While some people may find it comes naturally, we all can develop a stronger capacity for empathy by being intentional in our actions and responses. Listening, really listening without interrupting, without planning what we're going to say next, is one of the simplest yet most profound acts of empathy. It says, this moment is about you. I'm here to understand, not to judge or fix. In empathizing with others, we may realize that we don't need to have experienced exactly what they have to be able to connect with their feelings. Empathy doesn't demand that we know every detail of someone's story. It requires only that we open ourselves to their experience and acknowledge the reality of their emotions. Often saying something as simple as, I can't imagine exactly what that's like, but I'm here for you, it can be incredibly powerful. In doing so, we aren't pretending to fully understand. We're simply offering our presence, our willingness to stand by them as they navigate their journey. Empathy can dissolve feelings of shame, loneliness, and isolation. When someone feels truly empathized with, they're no longer alone in their pain. They no longer carry their burdens in silence, feeling misunderstood or dismissed. Instead, they have someone who, even without complete understanding, is willing to step into the discomfort with them. This act of shared humanity brings a sense of relief and acceptance, reminding them they are valued and seen. Empathy is also a reminder of our shared humanity. It teaches us that beneath our differences, we share fundamental feelings, experiences, and longings. It helps us break down the walls that divide us, whether those walls are built by fear, bias, or misunderstandings. Empathy enables us to embrace our commonalities and extend compassion, even to those whose lives may look different from our own. In the end, empathy is about connecting, not correcting. It's about showing up with our whole selves and being present for another person, offering them a glimpse of kindness and understanding that can make all the difference. Through empathy, we are reminded of the beauty in our shared experiences and in the comforting truth that none of us are alone. Vulnerability is at the heart of empathy. To truly connect with someone else's pain, joy, or fear, we have to be willing to open ourselves up and enter an emotional space that may feel raw and uncomfortable. Vulnerability requires letting go of our defenses and embracing a kind of emotional honesty that can be difficult, even risky. It's an act of courage where we set aside our need to be invulnerable, perfect, or even always in control. Instead, we allow ourselves to feel fully, both for ourselves and alongside someone else. And that is where real empathy can take root. When we are vulnerable in empathy, we're acknowledging that we don't have all the answers, that we're not above struggle or pain ourselves. This openness creates a powerful sense of equality between people. It tells the other person, I am willing to stand here with you, not as someone who's got it all figured out, but as someone who knows what it's like to struggle, to feel pain, to feel uncertainty. Vulnerability removes the barrier of superiority or distance that often stands in the way of empathy, allowing us to connect on a human level without pretense. To be vulnerable, we have to let down our guard, often sharing our own insecurities and stories of struggle if they're relevant. This openness helps build trust because it shows the other person that we're not afraid to be real. When we reveal that we too have experienced failure, heartbreak, or loss, we create a bridge of shared humanity. It's as if we're saying, I see you and you're not alone, because I've been there too. This sense of shared experience is one of the most powerful ways to dissolve feelings of isolation and shame that people often feel when they're going through difficult times. Vulnerability and empathy also means being willing to sit with another person's discomfort without rushing to change the subject or lessen the tension. It requires the patience to allow difficult emotions to surface without trying to brush them aside or gloss over them. Sometimes the instinct is to try to make the other person feel better right away, to offer solutions or comforting words, but often what they really need is for someone to be willing to stay with them in the discomfort. Being willing to hold that space without escaping is one of the purest expressions of empathy, and it requires vulnerability. We can't hide from our own discomfort if we're fully present with someone else's. When we are vulnerable, we allow ourselves to feel a part of the emotions that the other person is experiencing. If they are sharing a loss, we may feel a sense of grief or sadness as well. If they're overwhelmed by fear, we may feel some of that fear alongside them. Vulnerability allows us to walk alongside someone in their emotions, not because we know exactly what they're feeling, but because we're open to experiencing our own emotional responses, which creates a more genuine connection. Empathy isn't about pretending to have gone through the exact same thing, but it is about letting yourself be affected, moved, and touched by the experience the other person is sharing. Being vulnerable and empathy also means risking our own emotional safety at times. There's always a chance that our offer of empathy won't be reciprocated or that the other person might reject it, and that can be painful. Vulnerability doesn't come with guarantees, and that's part of what makes it so courageous. But when we're willing to take that risk, to lean into the uncertainty of being fully present, we're creating the conditions for profound human connection. It's in these vulnerable moments that relationships deepen, understanding grows, and healing can begin. Ultimately, vulnerability and empathy reminds us that we are all, in some way, imperfect, and that our shared humanity is built on this imperfection. We are not stepping into empathy as experts, but as fellow travelers on a shared journey of learning, growth, and understanding. Through vulnerability, we allow ourselves to connect in a way that is authentic and meaningful. It strips away the barriers and masks, allowing us to be seen as we are and allowing others to be seen as they are, without judgment, without expectations, simply in the spirit of genuine human connection. And in that space, empathy becomes a powerful force that binds us, heals us, and reminds us that we are not alone. Empathy has a unique ability to diminish shame, dissolving it in ways that logic or advice alone cannot. Shame is a deeply isolating emotion. It convinces us that there's something inherently wrong or unworthy within us, that we're somehow less valuable or deserving of love and belonging. It keeps us locked in a state of self-judgment, making us believe that if others really knew our true selves, our flaws, our fears, our mistakes, they would turn away. Shame feeds on silence and secrecy, thriving in the darkness where it can go unchallenged, telling us we're different in a way that disqualifies us from acceptance and connection. Empathy, however, is like a light that shines into those dark, hidden spaces where shame hides. When someone meets us in our vulnerability with empathy, they break down that isolating barrier, showing us that we're not alone. Empathy doesn't dismiss or minimize what we're feeling. It fully acknowledges our experiences, helping us see that they're valid and understandable. Through empathy, another person offers a safe, non-judgmental presence, allowing us to express the things we would otherwise keep hidden. This compassionate acknowledgement creates a space where shame can't survive, because shame depends on the idea that we're uniquely flawed and therefore separate from others. Empathy reveals the truth that we're not alone in our struggles, that others too have felt inadequate, scared, or imperfect, and that this shared humanity is what connects us. When someone responds to us with empathy, they communicate acceptance and understanding, which directly counters shame's message of unworthiness. Imagine sharing something deeply vulnerable and having the other person respond, not with judgment or pity, but with understanding, perhaps saying, "I felt that way too," or "Thank you for trusting me with this." In that moment, shame starts to lose its power. Instead of feeling judged, we feel valued. Instead of feeling alone, we feel seen and understood. This shift is profound as it replaces shame's isolating narrative with one of connection and belonging. Empathy's message is clear: you're not alone, and you're not broken. Empathy also allows us to see ourselves through a more compassionate lens. When someone listens to our shameful experiences and responds with kindness, it challenges the harsh self-judgment that shame often creates. Empathy helps us realize that our mistakes or struggles don't define our worth. It provides a perspective that says, you're still enough, even with all of this. This gentle acceptance can lead us to greater self-compassion as we begin to adopt the empathy that was shown to us, gradually treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding. Instead of being our own harshest critics, we start to become our own supporters, softening the inner dialogue that shame has built. Moreover, empathy gives us the courage to share our experiences more openly. When we experience empathy from another person, it reminds us that it's safe to be vulnerable, that our worth isn't determined by our flaws or imperfections. This encouragement helps us step out of isolation and connect with others more authentically. We might even begin to extend empathy to others, using our own experiences with shame to create understanding and compassion for those who may be struggling in similar ways. Through this cycle of empathy, we not only heal our own shame, but help others heal theirs as well. In these ways, empathy creates a ripple effect. When shame is met with empathy, it weakens, giving way to connection and understanding. It teaches us that we don't have to carry our burdens alone, that we can lean on others and be there for them in return. Empathy is a reminder that we're all human, that our experiences, no matter how difficult, are part of the shared fabric of life. In those moments of empathetic connection, shame cannot survive because empathy roots us firmly in the truth that we're worthy of love and belonging, just as we are. Listening without fixing is one of the most powerful yet underappreciated acts of support we can offer another person. When someone shares a struggle, pain, or worry, our natural impulse is often to jump in with solutions, to try and ease their discomfort by suggesting ways to solve the problem. This instinct comes from a well-meaning place, rooted in a desire to help or protect. However, what people often need most in moments of vulnerability is simply to be heard, to have their feelings validated and acknowledged without immediately being met with advice or answers. Listening without fixing requires us to set aside our urge to make it better and instead be fully present, allowing the other person the space to feel what they feel without interference. Another vital part of empathy is practicing non-judgment. Empathy requires us to suspend judgment, to avoid interpreting others' experiences through the lens of our own values, beliefs, or expectations. Judging others or assuming we know how they should feel blocks empathy, creating a barrier between us. When we practice empathy, we set aside our preconceived notions and meet people where they are, as they are, with respect and acceptance. This non-judgmental approach creates a space where people feel safe to share openly without fear of criticism or correction. It allows us to honor their feelings and experiences as valid, even if they differ from our own. Finally, empathy as a skill can be enhanced by practicing compassionate responses. Often, empathy is expressed not through grand gestures, but through simple acts of kindness, understanding, and validation. Compassionate responses might include saying, "I'm here for you, I understand why this is so hard," or "Thank you for sharing that with me." These small affirmations can make a profound difference, letting the other person know they are valued and heard. Compassionate responses require humility and a willingness to let the other person lead the conversation, allowing them to share at their own pace. This type of empathy builds trust and deepens relationships, showing that we are there to support, not to judge or solve. Ultimately, empathy as a skill is about becoming more attuned to our shared humanity. It's a practice of patience, presence, and intention, one that goes beyond surface-level understanding to touch the heart of what it means to be human. By intentionally developing this skill, we can create deeper connections, reduce feelings of isolation, and make the world a more compassionate place, one empathetic moment at a time. Embracing imperfection is one of the most liberating choices we can make. It's a radical act of self-compassion and acceptance, one that allows us to let go of the impossible standards that can hold us back from feeling genuinely worthy. In a culture that often prizes flawlessness, whether in appearance, achievements, or behavior, we're subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, encouraged to hide any part of ourselves that doesn't fit a certain image of perfect. But this pursuit of perfection is a losing battle. It's exhausting, relentless, and ultimately unfulfilling. Embracing imperfection, however, frees us from this trap. It invites us to approach life and ourselves with authenticity, courage, and a recognition of our humanity. When we embrace our imperfections, we're acknowledging that we're human. We're allowing ourselves to be real, to be seen, and to be valued just as we are. This is essential because perfectionism is often rooted in a fear of rejection, a belief that if we aren't perfect, we won't be accepted, loved, or respected. But the truth is, perfection isn't what connects us to others. It's our authenticity, our vulnerability, and our willingness to show up as we are. Imperfections are part of what make us relatable. They allow others to see themselves in us, fostering connection rather than distance. Embracing our flaws doesn't mean that we don't strive to grow or improve. Rather, it means that we understand our worth isn't contingent on achieving an idealized version of ourselves. Accepting our imperfections also allows us to be kinder to ourselves. When we acknowledge that we're not supposed to have all the answers or to excel in every area of life, we give ourselves permission to make mistakes, to fall short, and to learn along the way. This is a necessary ingredient for growth, as self-compassion provides the safety we need to take risks and try new things without fear of harsh self-judgment. When we view mistakes as opportunities to learn rather than as failures, we become more resilient and open to life's challenges. Embracing imperfection builds our confidence because it shifts our focus from seeking validation to seeking growth and self-understanding. Living with an embrace of imperfection also means letting go of the fear of judgment. Often, our need to appear perfect stems from a worry about what others might think. We want to be seen as capable, in control, and free of flaws. But when we release the need to constantly manage others' perceptions, we begin to live more freely. This doesn't mean we stop caring about others altogether. It simply means we stop holding ourselves to a standard that's impossible to reach. Instead of focusing on how we're perceived, we focus on being true to ourselves. We cultivate a life that's built on authenticity rather than on appearances, which allows us to live with greater peace, joy, and fulfillment. Another gift of embracing imperfection is that it makes us more compassionate toward others. When we recognize and accept our own flaws, we're less likely to judge or criticize others for theirs. We realize that everyone is navigating life with their own struggles, challenges, and shortcomings. Embracing imperfection fosters empathy as it helps us see beyond the surface of people's lives and understand that everyone, in some way, is dealing with their own imperfect realities. Instead of holding others to unrealistic standards, we meet them with grace, understanding, and compassion, building stronger, more supportive relationships. Embracing imperfection also teaches us to celebrate progress rather than perfection. In our journeys, whether personal, professional, or creative, focusing solely on an ideal outcome can be paralyzing. It can prevent us from taking the small steps necessary to achieve growth. But when we learn to value progress, we're more willing to start, to try, and to keep moving forward, even if the path isn't perfectly clear. Each small step becomes a victory, and we begin to appreciate our journey as one of learning, exploration, and self-discovery. Progress over perfection allows us to take action, to make choices, and to embrace each moment as a step forward without needing everything to be flawless. A critical part of embracing imperfection is also understanding that our worth isn't tied to our achievements, appearance, or status. We live in a world that often equates value with productivity and external success, leading us to believe that we must constantly prove ourselves to be worthy. But embracing imperfection reminds us that our worth is inherent. We are valuable simply because we exist. Our worth doesn't fluctuate with our achievements or setbacks, our successes or failures. This acceptance of inherent worth gives us a foundation of self-love and security, which is crucial for facing life's inevitable ups and downs. In embracing imperfection, we also cultivate a more joyful and fulfilling life. Striving for perfection can rob us of the beauty in ordinary moments, making us so focused on what could be better that we miss what's right in front of us. Embracing imperfection allows us to find joy in the present moment, to appreciate life as it is rather than constantly wishing for it to be different. We begin to see beauty in the small, imperfect details of life, in the quirks and oddities, the unexpected detours, the moments of laughter that arise from things not going as planned. Life becomes richer, more colorful, and more real when we allow it to be imperfect. Ultimately, embracing imperfection is about embracing our humanity. It's about recognizing that life is complex, that people are beautifully flawed, and that we are all growing in our own unique ways. It's an invitation to let go of unrealistic expectations, to live more authentically, and to build a foundation of self-compassion and acceptance. By embracing imperfection, we allow ourselves to be whole, to bring our full selves to our lives, our relationships, and our dreams. It's a journey of courage, self-discovery, and freedom, one that leads us closer to a life that feels honest, meaningful, and truly our own. Embracing imperfection is about letting go of impossible standards and accepting ourselves fully as we are. It's a courageous act of self-compassion that releases us from the pressure to appear flawless and allows us to live authentically. By accepting our own humanity, we become kinder to ourselves, more compassionate toward others, and better able to appreciate life's imperfect beauty. Embracing progress over perfection enables us to grow without fear of failure, finding value in the journey rather than the outcome. Ultimately, this acceptance frees us to live with greater joy, resilience, and a sense of self-worth that doesn't rely on external validation.